Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session on engagement in times of disruption. Please make sure to use the session chat to ask any questions during the session. We will leave the last 15 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. So in this session, we will have Professor Jawad Syed from Lahore University of Management Sciences and Dr. Ranjan Banerjee, Dean at SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, who will explore a multi-pronged approach to engagement. A lot of focus will be given to students and alumni engagement and the ways in which technology can be leveraged to compensate for the warmth of physical interaction. So without further delay, I will hand it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, the participants of this AACSB Asia Pacific Annual Conference. My name is Jawad Syed. As my introduction has been stated, I'm a professor of organizational behavior and leadership at the Suleman Dawood School of Business, Lahore University of Management Sciences. We are the only business school which is AACSB accredited in Pakistan, but I'm sure, and we are very hopeful that there are other business schools which would also follow the suit and over the period of next few months and years would acquire accreditation, international accreditation from AACSB and other international bodies. Thank you for this great opportunity which has been given to me to offer my perspectives based on our experiences and our observations and our responses in response to the COVID-19 crisis. It's a great pleasure for me to discuss the issue of engagement in times of disruption, which is the exact title of the session. Because engagement is something which we at LUMS, which is Lahore University of Management Sciences, are indeed very proud of, and we think that engagement is something upon which we should be able to evaluate our achievements or the lack thereof. COVID-19 was a very unexpected and destabilizing phenomenon, not only for governments, societies, and businesses, but also for a business school such as ours. So in this brief talk, I would be, of course, discussing some insights, not only from LUMS, but also from other business schools in Pakistan, given my role in various national bodies of business schools and higher education in Pakistan. I would also highlight the importance of a multi-pronged approach to engagement and stakeholders, particularly from a business school perspective. And also, I would be discussing the need for more contextual and indigenous insights and experiences. In my own research and publications elsewhere, I have been arguing that whereas we should continue to benefit from experiences and insights from North America, Europe, and elsewhere, but at the same time, ample attention should be given to contextual and indigenous, not only wisdom, but also sensitivities and innovations. That also applies to the context of our response in terms of engagement within the situation of COVID-19. So from a stakeholder perspective, three key principles have been identified, and which I think are also valid in the context of business schools engagement during COVID-19. And those principles are that, number one, all stakeholders, they have a right to participate in decision making, particularly those decisions which affect the stakeholders. So in a business school context, indeed, from LUMS perspective, our focus has been on students, which we consider the most important stakeholder, followed by faculty, alumni and businesses, board members and trustees, government to some extent, for us to some extent, because we are a private institution, but for a public sector, universities and schools, surely government would have a much more significant role, and the wider community and society. So all of them have a right to participate in decision making, number one. The second principle which we acknowledged, and perhaps we suggest that may be acknowledged and has been acknowledged by most schools and universities, that administrators and managers, whether we are deans or directors or vice chancellors or rectors, we have a fiduciary responsibility to serve the interests of all stakeholder groups. So not just the board members, not just the government officials, not just the students, but the variety of stakeholders, their interests should be served. And the third principle is that the objective or mission, or maybe the revisited objective or mission of the university ought to be the promotion of the interest of all stakeholders. So if COVID-19 has posed a threat to us, it has also posed an opportunity to all of us as directors and deans, as rectors and vice chancellors, that look, this is an opportunity for us to revisit the mission and the objectives of our school, which should be the promotion of the interests of all stakeholders, not just the administrators or trustees. So one stakeholder group should not have primacy over all others. So these are the three basic principles which could serve as the key theoretical framework upon which any school's intervention, response, or the lack of response to COVID-19 could be evaluated. And LUMS is no exception in that regard too. Right at the onset, I explained the need for, I highlighted the need for indigenous insights. Given that Pakistan is a Muslim majority country, it would be useful to also refer to the Islamic insights. So similarly, given that India is a multicultural society, referring to Islamic and Hindu, particularly Hindu, it's a Hindu majority country, Hindu insights, Buddhist insights would also be relevant. So the idea is not to consider one specific religion or its teaching as superordinate as compared to others, but the idea is to benefit from all of those insights. And then how, for example, the societal sensitivities and preferences could also be considered in defining the multi-stakeholder mission of a school. So from an Islamic perspective, according to the Quran, the human race is considered to be the trustee of God on earth. So whatever we do as, for example, as government leaders, as business school leaders, as university leaders, it is important that we are the trustees of the eternal being, of an ultimate eternity, and the life on earth is a test for all of us. So that is the basic notion, that all of us are trustees wherever we are. And the second thing is that we have to be mindful of the rights of all stakeholders, and we are responsible and accountable in terms of fulfilling the responsibilities and rights which have been reflected in Islamic teachings. So for example, there is a tradition of the Prophet, the Hadith, which says that so give to everyone who possesses a right his or her rights. So it is important that people's rights, whether they are men or women, whether they are students or teachers, whether they are staff or whether they are alumni or businesses, those rights, they have to be, we are accountable as leaders and managers of universities. So the term which has been used in the Arabic literature, in the Quranic literature, is right, haq in Arabic, which denotes something that can be justly claimed, or the interest and claims that different groups and individuals have been granted in Islamic teachings. And surely we not only refer to Islamic teachings, we also refer to Islamic rights in Islamic teachings. We also refer to rights which have been granted within the domain of law, and also rights which are considered to be our social responsibility and ethical responsibility. So COVID-19, all of us know the story, emerged in 2020, and the impact on universities and business schools across the world. It has been diverse, but it has largely reflected the pattern of the academic year and the mode of teaching. So for example, in Pakistan, this pandemic emerged midway through the academic year. Our academic term was still on. So drastic changes had to be incorporated in order to cater for certain regulatory requirements, those requirements which were imposed on us, not only by the Health Ministry of the government of Pakistan, but also by the Higher Education Commission. So we were within a very brief period of a few days or maybe 2 weeks, we were required to go virtual. So this means that universities and schools, we had to shut down our regular business, and then we had to struggle in terms of not only managing the training, but also the expectation of our faculty members, our students, and other stakeholders. So the impact, not only this intervention and this crisis not only affected the on-campus teaching, but also other elements of our operations and our engagement with other stakeholders was affected. So for example, at LUMS, we have a very very active executive education program, Rousing Executive Development Center, or REDC, that was affected as well. And when it was affected, this means that at least temporarily, our service of the alumni and the businesses, that was affected. Auxiliary services, they were affected. Physical access to library services, that was affected. Food provision on campus, it was minimized to bare minimum. Hostel facilities, of course, they were affected because they had to be vacated due to the health precautions. But in addition to these immediate challenges, COVID-19 also affected our recruitment, student recruitment, which then in turn also had an impact on our financial sustainability. Because, of course, due to student tuition, but also our engagement through consultancies of the public and private sector organizations, our provision of lifelong learning courses, our provision of executive education courses, all of those were affected, which then adversely affected our financial inflows. We had to rapidly adapt our pedagogy and assessment. In particular, our faculty members, they were particularly concerned, and so were the students, about the way student progress and performance in different courses and programs would be assessed. Currently, our schools, various schools, are contemplating a more planned and structured adaptation to a new normal, something which all of us, right from AACSB to universities in North America to Asia Pacific, we are currently adapting to this new normal. So what exactly did we do at LUMS in order to better engage with our stakeholders? Once again, as I said, that our immediate stakeholders were our students, our faculty members, our support and administrative staff. So awareness posters in both languages, English and Urdu, they were distributed and displayed all over the campus. Specific guidelines were provided by the government and the World Health Organization, and from time to time they were communicated and complied with. Certain SOPs were introduced. People responsible for those SOPs, they were trained. For example, at the entry point of the campus, security staff, they were trained in terms of using of infrared temperature meters or thermometers. They were also provided with disinfectants. Safety behaviors such as hand washing, these behaviors were promoted and strongly encouraged. For example, hand sanitizers, they were provided in each building or at the entrance of most classrooms or most activity rooms. Increased cleaning of classrooms, labs, washrooms, and other facilities, they were undertaken. And of course, large-scale meetings and gatherings, they were cancelled. Until now, we have not yet started our face-to-face teaching mode at LUMS, although from January 2021, we are hoping that with, of course, with social distancing and with proper SOPs for health, we would be able to offer our face-to-face classes at this university. You see, the first thing which I have discussed with you in the past few minutes was more to do with the well-being of our students and well-being of our faculty members and well-being of other stakeholders with whom we physically interact on campus or off campus. But at the same time, we were also equally concerned about the continuity. You see that businesses, when they talk about COVID-19, they talk about two things. Only a few days ago, I was moderating a very high-profile panel for one of our virtual remote executive education program in Pakistan, and many top leaders from public and private sector organizations were panelists in that panel. And one common theme which emerged from the panel discussion was the concurrent emphasis on two things in terms of organizational response to COVID-19. And the first response was the well-being of employees and all other stakeholders. And the second response was the business continuity. I think more or less that also applies to business schools. That first of all, we should remain concerned with the well-being of all stakeholders, not least students, but also faculty and alumni and staff, and so on and so forth. But also we should be concerned about the university continuity. The faculty and staff working remotely, they were working and they are working remotely at LUMS to ensure the continuity of the university's mission to impart knowledge and to continue to impart our academic program and courses. So our teachers and professional staff, they remain virtually available for students, for executive students, and for our business stakeholders. Measures were taken in order for students and teachers to smoothly transition to the new students, so new SOPs were introduced. One thing which LUMS has done is that in July 2020, we also hired a new professional as Director of Health Services. And now Director of Health Services, she is also a part of the steering committee, the overseeing committee, which is responsible for designing and evaluating the university's response to COVID-19, and also engagement with other stakeholders, including the government, the businesses, and the alumni. Internet, of course, along with technology, with Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and the provision of Wi-Fi and LAN and the equipment wherever it is possible, it has been expanded to the next level, which has enabled, in a way, it has also enabled the inclusive and accessible education. So in terms of community engagement, as I have said, that our online learning sessions, they have been conducted by LUMS Learning Institute. Many of these sessions, if not all of these, these have been organized and led by our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Arshad Ahmed, who has an expertise and specific interest in teaching and learning. So therefore, wherever we are in the comfort of our own home offices or our homes, we have been able to learn the pitfalls and the complexities of online teaching and online assessment, and how online courses and programs could be improved. In terms of industry engagement, I have already said that certain activities such as consultancy, mentoring, and also in-depth interviews as a part of our industry engagement, we have continued, our faculty members have continued to engage with the industry. Even for my own classes, for example, I encourage students that instead of guest lectures, whenever they have to present me a project on the basis of field study, then perhaps they can also include some virtual interviews with relevant industry leaders and managers. So corporate leaders are routinely invited as guest speakers and panelists in our regular academic education and executive education programs. Industry engagement is also continued to be offered through our executive education. Faculty development, I have already covered in my conversation. Rapid action followed COVID-19 advisory leadership team at LUMS, which comprises mostly the Vice Chancellor, the Provost, the Vice Provost, and the Deans of the 5 schools that we have at this university. It anticipated an impending lockdown because we were looking at the situation not only in North America, but also in our neighboring countries such as Iran and Turkey. So in a way, we were ready, are somewhat ready for the lockdown, drawing lessons from the countries where COVID-19 first broke out. So number of actions were taken. So faculty and non-teaching staff, they were required and they were encouraged to work from home. And the institute, LUMS, chose Zoom as the platform for virtual teaching and virtual collaboration and meetings. Various administrative measures were taken. Let me go to students. Students, of course, are the most affected stakeholder. I must also acknowledge that there was a lot of anxiety from student side, particularly given that LUMS is the is considered #1 university, not only in terms of the quality of education and quality of faculty, and also in terms of our international accreditations. It is considered the #1 university and #1 business school in Pakistan. Students not only value our faculty members and teachers, but they also value the ambience, the overall environment which is provided by LUMS. So that is something which students missed, our faculty members, our administrators, and staff missed, and therefore there have been some petitions by the students to open the university for face-to-face teaching as much as possible. The university is currently implementing a gradual approach to incorporation and introduction of students on campus. Students are being introduced, being allowed to come back to their hostel on a gradual and incremental basis, and we are also continuing to monitor the situation. So for example, only a week ago, voluntary tests were introduced, where free of cost COVID-19 tests were administered to a selection of students and faculty members and staff members in order to ensure that the university offers a safe environment for all the stakeholders who are physically coming to campus. So staff, of course, have been significantly affected. The same health precautions, they have been also implemented on staff. But over and above, staff have also been provided the equipment and resources in order to ensure their continued connectivity with students and with other colleagues through the technology infrastructure. Look, I have to acknowledge that the school has also faced, the university has also faced financial crunch. We have suffered in terms of the fee, not only the tuition fee, but also we contemplated and we reduced, in fact, we canceled our annual increase in the tuition fee, which then, of course, affected our financial inflow. Our restaurants and hostels were affected, and of course there are fixed costs which we have to bear. Executive education inflows, they were also adversely affected, though we have started executive education now through virtual means, but surely the levels of our regular executive education and the financial inflows, they have been affected. As a university, we have adopted a consultative model. So we have continued not only to consult with the different administrators and faculty members, but also students who are represented in various committees and councils of the university, including the University Council. Let me now go to the future, and with this I would also be concluding at least my part of the presentation, because Ranjan has to make his presentation, and then we would also be open to some Q&A. I think that we have to understand that we have to transition from social distancing to spatial connection, and most of us, including at LUMS, but also at many other universities in Pakistan, India, and other parts of the world, I think that we as faculty members, we as faculty leaders and students, we have learned that although we are socially distanced, but still we are spatially connected. So we are not disconnected, we are connected, if not through face-to-face means, but through virtual means. But I think that at the most basic level, COVID has posed a challenge to our activity and supporting the development of students through curricula and co-curricular experiences and opportunities. Of course, our face-to-face and personalized delivery systems have been compromised. So there is a need to build resilient and flexible models of education that should continue to enable continuous adaptation to different phases of the new normal. I suggest that we would need to develop and continue to design and redesign courses that would help decision makers not only within the business schools, but also in the external organizations model and deal with complex problems and uncertainty. You see that crisis has not only posed us a challenge in terms of its threats, in terms of its physical and financial threats, but it also has given us an opportunity to forge our leadership skills, as is suggested by some scholars at Harvard. Virtual and remote education will continue to increase. So that is also our learning at the business school at LUMS, this will increase access for students. So whereas there is a downside of virtual education, there is also a positive side that many those students and administrators and faculty members who were previously not able to come to university due to whatever reasons, now they are able to join our classes and meetings despite their own commitments elsewhere. Online learning will become more and less important. And with this slide, I will conclude my talk. It will become more important because as educators, we have to learn at pace how to use the technology, how to deploy the technology, such as this technology that we are using. And so we will see it deployed in more and more programs and courses within the business school and outside. So it will become more important. It will, in a way, also, I think it is important for us to acknowledge that it will become less important as we continue to discover and rediscover the importance of the physical touch, the physical presence, and human touch in building relationships, team development, team learning, and team solutions, which are currently lacking in the online space. With this, I conclude my submission. I think that now I would be inviting Ranjan for his part of the talk, and afterwards we would be open for Q&A unless the coordinators would like to have the Q&A now. Thank you for patient hearing.
Hannah, do you want to come in or do you want me to start?
Ranjan, I think you can start.
We'll do the Q&A 15 minutes before the session ends, after your session, Ranjan. After.
Okay. So good morning, good afternoon to everybody here on this session. Thank you, Jawad. It was good to listen to you. I thought the Director of Health Services was an interesting perspective. A little bit about our institute, SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. We are AACSB accredited. We are consistently among the top 5 schools in India. I'm proud to share that we have recently become 36th in the Financial Times Global Masters in Management ranking, which puts us among the top 3 in India. I'm going to pretty much pick up where Jawad took off, and I'm going to talk about stakeholder management. And I'm going to go stakeholder by stakeholder, and hopefully I will see if I can use the chat for a little bit of interactivity. I want to start off by talking about something called the Stockdale Paradox. Now, James Stockdale was a prisoner in a concentration camp, and he observed many people being in the concentration camp he was in a concentration camp for 7 years, and he survived, and he went on to become a candidate for Vice President of the United States. And he talks about something called the Stockdale Paradox, where he says there are 3 types of prisoners in the concentration camp. The first is what he will call the hardcore optimist. So the hardcore optimist is this guy who says, I'm going to be home for Christmas. So let's say you're in a concentration camp in June. He says, this is bad, but I'm going to be home for Christmas. The second type of prisoner is what he calls the absolute pessimist. And the pessimist is the person who says, this is bad, I don't know how long it's going to last, spends a lot of time complaining. And the third is what he calls the realistic optimist. And the realistic optimist says, this is bad, I'm in a difficult situation, I don't know how long it's going to last, I have to do 2 things. I have to find a coping strategy to handle the difficult phase, and I have to have a vision of what things will look like when it gets better. So I have a vision to look forward to. So we are talking about a hardcore optimist, a pessimist, and a realistic optimist. And the question that Jim Stockdale asked was, who do you think, and you could try putting this in the chat if you have, if I'm clear, who do you think is the first person to die in the concentration camp? Is it the hardcore optimist, is it the pessimist, or the realistic optimist? Okay, so Alima says the hardcore optimist. So Alima, that is completely right. Essentially what happens is that what they found was between 25th of December and 31st of December, a number of prisoners died. And these were the prisoners who said, we will be home for Christmas. They had managed to keep their positivity alive with one dream, that by Christmas I'm going to see my family. And the moment that was not true, they had nothing to live for, and they kind of gave up. And the point is that this is called the Stockdale Paradox, that the only approach to this is to be a realistic optimist. And what does being a realistic optimist mean? And I will relate this to stakeholder management. Basically, you need, one is you need a clear strategy to make the best out of the pandemic phase. What are you going to do to make the best out of the pandemic phase? Number one. Number two, you need a vision of how things will get better post-pandemic, and you need to plan for both. Now, if you take this as a perspective, that there is a pandemic phase and you need to make the best out of it, and there is a vision post-pandemic, and we need to have both of these in mind, we now take a perspective of stakeholder management. And in stakeholder management, the approach I am going to take is that for each stakeholder, you need to understand their needs, their fears, and their insecurities, and then figure out how you're going to engage with each of these stakeholders. Now, I will talk to you about our institute, and our institute situation was that in March, 2 weeks before the government of India had a lockdown, we sent all our students home. So we sent all our students home, and in 2 weeks on their own, 2 of our technology faculty called a faculty meeting, and they trained us on how to teach with Zoom. And if I had to normally get all my faculty to start teaching online, there would have been many, many logical reasons why it could not be done. But the pandemic became an opportunity, and within 2 weeks, the entire faculty body taught online. And as of now, there is a lot of training and development we've done. If you look at the institute, we had a total of 9 long-term programs. 8 out of 9 long-term programs have successfully transited online. We have one program where the students have registered, but they would like to wait for the physical classes to come to campus and start. So 8 out of 9. Now let me look at each stakeholder and say, what is the role of leadership when it comes to stakeholder management? And we can talk about 4 or 5 stakeholders here. I will talk about staff, I will talk about faculty, I will talk about students, I will talk about alumni, and then I will talk about corporate partners and recruiters. So let me first start by talking about staff. I will come to faculty second because faculty are normally well treated. Staff are also well treated, but there is a specific issue that when you look at your staff, many of your staff, their income dependence on the institution is high. And when you look at it, there are 2 or 3 issues that we found with staff. One is there is a great insecurity of employment. Will I keep my job? Will I get my salary on time? How is my institute going to fare? Number one. Number two, many of your staff may have connectivity issues. They may also have pressure of managing the home front as well as the office front simultaneously. And many of them may not have, for instance, the right quality of internet connectivity or the infrastructure in terms of a good laptop at home, because they have not designed their work lives to be working from home. Now, therefore, with staff, there are 3 or 4 principles we follow. The first principle was to go and have an open house and say, this is how the institute is going to be. Fortunately for us, we are a financially strong institute, 8 out of 9. So our revenue streams were affected, but our viability as an institute was not affected. We were able to go and tell staff, and I think this is very important, whatever happens, your jobs are safe, your salaries are safe. And I think giving people that assurance is the first piece that they need. They need that assurance of a guarantee of employment. Second is you need regular connectivity. Third is our HR department reached out to each and every staff member to say, are you happy? So we conducted one-on-one calls. We insisted on it. Are you happy? Are you comfortable? Do you have the infrastructure you need? And then we realized that some of our staff did not have the right quality of personal laptops, or they had not got their office laptops. So we then said that in this context, we have to arrange. So we created a new laptop policy. We got laptops sent to all the staff. So we had regular kind of interaction. So number one, there is official interaction, which gives reassurance. There are regular open houses. There is one-to-one interaction because you need to understand and empathize with the pressures that your people are going through. So this is the first piece. And why am I talking about staff and faculty first as stakeholders? Because you have to understand that as a leader, if your primary stakeholder is the student, you do not serve the student. You serve the student through the faculty and the staff. So it is your job to enable the faculty and the staff to serve the student. And in that sense, the first focus is on creating the right context for your faculty and staff to provide service to your student. So I've spoken about staff basic principles: communicate very frequently, give assurance of employment, understand where there are issues in terms of infrastructure. Wherever there are issues in terms of infrastructure in working from home, support that. Give them a context and help them to stay bonded. I mean, there were people who did activities like Housey, there were people who did get-togethers. Take regular feedback, and this is the role of your HR department. It is the role of leadership. It is the role of individual supervisors. Reach out proactively to people. Just because people do not complain does not mean that they do not have issues. There are widespread issues, particularly on the mental side. And one needs to reach out to people, empathize, listen. Okay, so this is the first piece that we'll talk about on staff. The second piece on faculty, on faculty, I think the biggest thing for us, the biggest advantage is as an institute, we have what I call we have a weekly faculty meet. So every week our faculty body meets. We earlier had a culture where alternate faculty meets. One is handled by me, the dean. I set the agenda. Every alternate faculty meet is handled by a different faculty member. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, one of the faculty members handled the meet and did it very well and with a lot of intensity and creativity. So I made a change. I said all faculty meets in the pandemic will be chaired by different faculty members. And each faculty member was encouraged to do self-expression. That is to bring their own personality into the faculty meet. So this weekly faculty meet, and normally out of 65 faculty, our attendance in the faculty meet varies from 50 to 55 in the physical world. All our faculty meets have been close to 100% attendance because the need for connection at this point in time is much higher. The need for regular communication is much higher. The need for going out and clarifying your policies is much higher. So I think almost every month you have to calibrate and say, this is the state of the pandemic. This is where your institute is. On faculty and staff, I'd like to say 2 or 3 things. One is that this becomes a very good opportunity to do faculty development, particularly in terms of methodology. And if you can democratize that faculty development, then as faculty are teaching online, you need to speed up the learning curve. So one of the things we did is very early on in the pandemic, I took a class and I shared the video of my class with the entire faculty body. And I said, I encourage those faculty who are open to this, please share your videos with each other, because you want to find out when you're in this crisis, how can dissemination of knowledge and best practice, how can you create mechanisms that happens quickly and automatically within your faculty body? And I think that then becomes a very significant kind of piece. Okay, so I've spoken about faculty and students. I want to say one more thing. It was a difficult call for us to take, but it was a big call. As I said, our financial model is reasonably robust and 8 out of 9. So we took a call and we did this without any fanfare, but it has a huge impact. We gave increments this year. In the middle of the pandemic, we gave increments to each and every employee. And we did it quietly. We did not say we are doing a favor to anybody. We did not, talk about it. We said that you have worked for the year. The institute is financially sound. And the impact of that, I have never been thanked by so many people for giving an increment before. So just that kind of an impact. So I think providing security, having empathy, reaching out, communicating, checking in, involving faculty, that is number one. Number two aspect of management is that if you as an institute have a management committee, you have to think about the fact that the nature of the people who need to involve in day-to-day decisions has changed. So for instance, your technology people are now more important. Your people who handle your hostels are now more important because they have a sense of what is happening on the ground. So we created an institute operations committee, which met once a week, and we did this for 3 months until our operations were stabilized. After that, we actually disbanded this committee. We have created a back to campus committee, which is looking at how we will gradually get students back. This includes aspect of social distancing and social connection, but it includes practically the whole plan. What are you going to do? What will you do if you bring your students back and some people fall sick? What is the plan for doing that? How are you going to change student habit? What is the kind of communication you need to make? So we have a back to campus committee, and then we have a after return to campus committee. Of course, Javed, like you, we are just about talking about getting some needy students back to the hostel. Classes will take some time to start. Now let me talk about students. And in students, there are, as I said, we have multiple types of programs. One of the first issues that we had was we had students who had gone on a social sector internship, and they were in the middle of the internship when this broke out. So we went on a student to student contact plan, and we got all the students to travel back, and they had completed half their internship physically and had to do half the internship remotely. We reached out to every agency, looked at the travel plans for every student, and some students took longer than others. But on a one-on-one basis, it is that you have to get your students back and ensure that they were safe. And we had to rechange or rejig the entire idea of how those internships would be done. So that is number one. Number two, I think with students, almost every month with every program, there is an open house. We are communicating what we are doing. We are communicating what is happening. We are taking their feedback on the class. So having regular two-way communication with students becomes to me the third element. The fourth element, and this is something that is very interesting, is that, when we induct a new batch, and we have had a new batch of our 2-year program join, and the batch has not been affected, and the attendance and, now 240 students. Now what normally happens is students get oriented. They have an orientation and a welcome. And a big thing after the orientation and the welcome is immediately after the orientation, they go outside and food and tea are served. And when food and snacks and tea are served, 2 faculty members and 4 students sit around a table and they chat. And that is where the true socialization and integration of the students begins. Now, here is the problem. In the online, there is no direct equivalent of 4 students and 2 faculty sitting around and chatting. Now, how do you replace that? So we asked our faculty to volunteer. 28 out of 50 faculty volunteered. And we conducted hangouts with students in groups of 6. And these were hangouts where faculty went with the new students and said, I am the faculty member, ask me any questions. And essentially, how do you create that bonding with students? Similarly, we have an event with students called the Personal Growth Lab. The Personal Growth Lab is an outbound team building kind of an exercise where students go mountain climbing in groups. They get to know each other, psychometrics. We had to reconfigure that entire Personal Growth Lab for an online connection. And we managed to do it. We managed to do it with group work. We managed to do it with psychometrics. So I think one of the larger things we have learned, one is regular communication, empathy. It cannot be done by 3 or 4 people. You have to engage your entire faculty body in engaging with the students. You have to take your entire faculty body. Initially, we have a confirmation bias. We as teachers say, this cannot be done online. This cannot be done online. That cannot be done online. And that confirmation bias, if you allow it to go unchecked, is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think something cannot be done, it is true, it cannot be done. But later on, we discovered that at least 70% of the things that we thought cannot be done can be done quite well online. I will give you a simple example. I teach a course called Design Thinking. In Design Thinking, there is this place where people get up and they write on post-it pads and they stick it on a whiteboard. And this is a group work. And we always thought this kind of physical group work cannot be done online. Till we Googled and we discovered a tool called Padlet, and there are many other tools. But Padlet is a simple tool where you can just send a link to everybody on WhatsApp. They can make their own digital post-it pads, they can make their own Padlets, they can make videos, they can put stories, they can put images. In many ways, those Padlet boards are richer than our physical whiteboards because you can incorporate video, you can incorporate. So I think one of the things we have learned largely is that you need to approach what is possible and what is not possible, not with the mindset of an experienced student, but with the mindset of a naive student, an experienced teacher, but with the mindset of a naive student. And if you do that with the mindset of a naive student, then you discover so many things that you can do. On the teaching front, the last thing I will say is this: we have expanded our assumption about visiting faculty. In the in the offline world, a visiting faculty, an international visiting faculty, was somebody who came in from abroad, stayed in Mumbai for 3 weeks, and all his classes were bunched in those 3 weeks. Today, we have realized we can source visiting faculty from across the world. When we are teaching a case study, we can get the CEO of that company, even the global CEO, to come in for the last 10 minutes and offer. And we have found that with remote, when they don't have to displace, the number of corporate people who are willing to come in and be part of your classrooms and enrich your classroom has just gone up dramatically. So there is a lot of opportunity to examine and challenge your implicit assumptions. Okay, two more stakeholders I will talk about, and I will keep it short. I think, Javed, I know I'm running out of time. One aspect is alumni. And alumni, I will just say this. We found that we could hold an online alumni meet for 900 alumni across the world. And we found alumni across the world could be invited to speak. And when we reached out to alumni and said, do something different, 15 alumni from across the world got together and recorded a song. And they played that song on the occasion. If I had time, I would play that song to you. But new forms of collaboration are possible. And your students are very good at it. They are technology masters. You just need to enable them and give them. I'll just say one more thing. We have an institute-wide initiative for mental health and counseling called Vishwas. Once a week, students, faculty, staff, and alumni can log on to an online forum. And this is a space for unconditional sharing. They can talk about their failures. They can talk about their history. And there is a theme every week. And this is a platform where faculty, staff, students, and alumni come together and talk as equals. This could not have been done in the offline world. But one of the things I want to emphasize is this element of communicate, communicate, communicate. Have a strategy for the pandemic and a strategy post-pandemic. Empathy becomes very critical. And psychological safety is important. Just because somebody is not complaining does not mean they don't have a problem. So proactive outreach becomes very important. If you do all of this, there are a lot of opportunities in crisis, and I haven't yet started on the next thing, which is we have to move to hybrid teaching. We have to have classes which can be conducted physically and online at the same time. And what that implies for infrastructure is another thing. So thank you very much, Hannah. I think that is it from my side.
All right,
And
thank you, Professor Jawad and Dr. Ranjan. So we have two questions so far. First is from Dr. Abhishek from James Cook University. So his question is, okay, he experienced over communication with stakeholders during current pandemic, leading to confusion and rumors, especially within the student body. So how to unify messaging in the virtual world?
So can I take that? I think, Hannah, first of all, great question. The way we have communicated is we have had open houses. And in open houses, let us say I'm communicating with a program. My program head is there. All the students are there. The head of the institute is there. My back to campus committee is there. So communications are made one time and proactively and regularly, number one. Number two, we don't just do the batch meet. We plan the communication in the batch meet for at least 5 days before the batch meet. I don't think you need to over communicate, but I think you need to communicate as a team, as an integrated whole. The left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing. And if you do that right, it is fine. So the problem in these times is, whenever there is a gap of information, it is filled by gossip. And if you do not give gossip an opportunity, then you will be fine. And the second is, you and your stakeholders need to be on the same page. Your faculty body needs to be on the same page. So you need to be clear about who is communicating. If 10 different people are giving 10 different messages, you will get rumor mongering. If you are communicating proactively and having open houses, it is much better that the difficult questions get answered in public forums rather than private WhatsApp groups and chats.
Okay, if I could offer my 2 cents, Abhishek, once again, I think as Ranjan said, it's a great question. And taking Ranjan's insights further, I would say that there are 3 things which come to my mind. Number one, once we agree on this thing, that this COVID-19 is the new normal, then surely every other thing, every other dimension would also face a new normal, which also includes communication. In the new normal, in the initial phases, it would be, I would say, unrealistic to assume that there would not be confusion. There was confusion. There would not be gossips. There were gossips. There would not be anxieties. There were anxieties. And I must say that even as university leaders, as senior professors, as universities, we were also not sure about what is going to happen, for example, in the next few weeks or months. But what exactly is the resolution? The resolution, as far as I understand, lies in 2 words. The first, I would say, word would be the vision and values of the university. As long as we are sticking to the vision and the values of the university, then the communication would not be misleading, would not be confusing. So whether it is 1 email or 2 emails, whether it is 1 email message complemented with 1 WhatsApp message and 1 Zoom meeting, as long as they are in sync, they are moving in the right direction, they are giving the same message, I think that I would not worry too much about, for example, repeating and reinforcing the same message, at least in the initial phases of the crisis or COVID-19. The second thing which Ranjan has also highlighted in his response is the structure. We need to have structure. So who is responsible for communication? Who, for example, is responsible for clarifying, for example, the health-related SOPs in the university? Who is responsible, for example, in terms of making sure that students come back to campus, but in a gradual manner, in a manner which can be supported in view of many different SOPs, not only to fulfill the academic learning requirements, but also the regulatory requirements of the Higher Education Commission or the University Grants Commission or the Government Health Ministry, and so on and so forth. So 3 things to wrap up. Number one, it's a new normal. There would be some anxiety and confusion. There may be some communication overflow, so we have to bear with that. But number 2, that overflow has to be in one direction. It should not be in confusing directions. So that one direction would be set by the university's values and vision. And number 3, there has to be a structure.
Thank you. We have a next question from Professor Robin Wang from Yunzi University. Field trip and internships are important for business students. How could you share how you deal with these activities in this pandemic year?
Ranjan, with your permission.
So,
yeah, go ahead, please. Ranjan, go ahead.
Yeah. You want to go first, Jawad, please?
Okay, I was only to share my own experience, which my faculty members and we have been doing here at LUMS in Lahore. That many businesses, they have started operating. So whereas we at LUMS have not yet allowed face-to-face classes on campus. But in view of the fact that many businesses, particularly those who are which are in essential services or which are in manufacturing or production lines, since they have started operating, we encourage our students where possible that following all the SOPs, we encourage you to visit those organizations and conduct your field trips and whatever it is. And in some instances where their visit is not possible due to the organizational policy, we encourage them to continue their contact and maintain their contact through virtual means. So for example, if for my own class in human resource management, one requirement is that as a part of their seminar activity, they have to visit an organization. And if the organization doesn't allow the external visitors to physically visit the organization, they use, for example, Zoom interviews and Zoom meetings and Zoom focus groups in order to collect relevant data. That was all from my side, Ranjan.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's an overlap. Robin, you know, the interesting thing in India is that our, you know, job placements are very critical for our students, and job placements are a function of the internships, because through internships you get offers. And we have autumn internships for our 2-year program, second year, of 240 students. They are all doing internships as of today. All of them are doing remote internships. We reached out to all our regular recruiters. We said that, you know, what is it that you will do? And all companies, including Unilever, including Boston Consulting Group, they have all offered remote internships. Now, what we do find, of course, is that business has been affected. So if 240 students got internships in 80 companies last year, this year we had to reach out to 100 plus. And these are all paid internships, mind you. So 240 students as of now are doing 6-week remote internships in different corporates across the country from their homes, and it is working out fine. Corporate India has adapted to this when it comes to the best schools. So are they losing out? Of course, they are losing out on some things. But we have found that you can talk to distributors online. We have found that you can do some local market visits in the city in which you are. We have found that it is possible to give structure. So we are checking in with our students. And as I speak, Robin, 240 internships with some local travel and some local visit to the company, they're not traveling across location, are being done for the entire batch of students. So it is happening. We were fortunate in the sense that these internships are happening now. So I think over a period of months, corporates became more open. In the first 2 or 3 months, they were just too bothered about survival. But slowly things are moving back to normal. Product goods and supplies are being serviced. There are sectors within the economy that are growing. There are sectors which are affected. But it is possible to do online internships. There is something that is compromised. But at the end of the day, as long as corporates value your students and you value the corporate, and you reach out to the corporate with empathy, it is possible even in this
Thank
time.
you. We have our last question from Professor Ahmed Khalid, University of Brunei Darussalam. He would like your thoughts on this based on his conversation with friends from other universities in the region and our own surveys. Students are not very comfortable with online teaching. If this new online model becomes a new norm, at least for a short period, how can we have a better engagement with students, keeping the quality of teaching and learning?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ranjan, would you like to take it first, or whatever you wish? Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, there's a long answer to this, and I know, Hannah, I think you have 1 minute or 2
Yeah.
minutes now. Yeah, so let me just say this, that you don't need to look at online teaching as only online teaching. Online teaching includes one-to-many classrooms, includes breakout rooms, includes synchronous and asynchronous. And one of the things I have found, so once you explore the full range of tools, many things that you can compensate for and students enjoy it, number one. Number two, realize that you cannot go at the same pace. So one of the things we have realized is that in a day, if you're doing 5 classes in an offline environment, that has to go to 3 to 4 online. Students are spending far too much time in front of a digital screen. So training of faculty, using multiple tools, experimentation with multiple modes, supplementing classes with small group hangouts, using synchronous and asynchronous wisely, experimenting with a variety of digital tools, it can help. But we need to teach less. We need to reduce the intensity of classes on a single day, and that in itself poses a challenge. With all of this, you can get up to, my guess is, a reasonable proportion. Some of our faculty have got higher feedback, but yes, you can never compensate for the physical energy of 50 people in front of you in a classroom. So there are some things
Thank
you miss
you.
out.
Thank you, Ranjan. I think that one thing which can be taking this very shortly forward, that we can very clearly convey to our students the pros and cons of the online education as well as the face-to-face education. And both of these models have their own pros and cons. Very quickly responding to Ahmed, your second part of your question, as far as my assessment is concerned, the future lies in hybrid education. So this new normal is not going to completely vanish in the future. The remnants of this new normal would remain in the format and design and delivery of business education and education elsewhere in the world, apparently.
Thank you. So we have come to the end of the session. If you have additional questions, please feel free to connect with the speakers on Exchange or direct message them from the attendees tab on the right side of the screen. So just a reminder to complete the survey for this session. Thank you, Dr. Ranjan and Professor Jawad.
Thank you, Hannah, Ranjan, and all the participants for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Javed. Pleasure meeting you. Thank you, Hannah, again.
Hopefully we will meet in person one day.
Bye.